Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to the next series of talks in our course on Indian knowledge systems at IIT Gandhinagar. Today and tomorrow, we are very happy to have with us Dr. V.N. Prabhakar, who is an associate professor at IIT Gandhinagar and a professional archaeologist with a long experience. He's participated in many excavations in India from Dholavira to Sanoli and directing more specifically excavations at the Harappan sites of Rupnagar or Ropar in Punjab and Karanpura in Rajasthan. Apart from that, he has a long experience in handling heritage monuments, in particular those listed under the UNESCO World Heritage Properties series, and in particular at Ajanta and Ellora, the famous rock-cut caves, about which I am sure he's going to tell us more particularly today. So he has a very wide-ranging experience, and that is why we invited him to give us two talks on Indian architecture, which is an indispensable exploration we need to do in this semester's course on the web of Indian aesthetics and arts. Without further introduction, I'll request Professor Prabhakar to take over and guide us in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. These two lectures, one on rock-cut architecture or rock-cut edifices, and another on structural temples of India. So we will be kind of exploring, because it's very difficult to cover a wide gamut of evidences from the Indian subcontinent in a matter of 2 hours. But I will be kind of switching from here and there, covering important timelines in the ancient Indian architecture, and try to kind of build up a story so that you can all understand what is the importance and what is the kind of various manifestations we can see in the Indian context. So straight away I will share my presentation here. So my outline of the presentation is we'll trace some of the beginnings, because in the Indian context we have at a particular time period we see the emergence of rock-cut architecture and rock-cut edifices. Like this one, this is one of the earliest. This is the Lomas Rishi cave at the Barabar and Nagarjuni hills in Bihar, where the initial rock carvings and the creation of monastic establishments were created during the period of Emperor Ashoka. Later on, we see the Buddhism as a catalyst for spread of such architecture to various parts of India, including Maharashtra. Maharashtra, we see a hub of activities happening, and we have the maximum number of such edifices from Maharashtra, numbering to around 1200 caves there. So there were different categories of donors. We will be looking into that, from very basic mendicant to the royal personnels. So we see various donors, and we also look into the evidences and different mediums also. These rock-cut architecture have been found in India. We'll be seeing one by one, and how the methodology might have been followed. Different areas, different kind of methodologies have been followed. We'll be looking into that, and also how later on the structural forms are evolving, and ultimately the rock-cut styles, they are taken over by the structural temple styles. At one particular point of time, the structural temples, they were duplicated in the rock medium. That we will look into them, and we have a peak of this rock-cut architecture in Indian context around 12th and 13th centuries, and slightly in the 15th century also we have some examples in the Maharashtrian context. We will look into them. And ultimately, they were wonderful medium for the sculptural decorations and also painting. Some of the most famous paintings of Ajanta, Bach caves, Sittanavasal, they were executed on these rock edifices. So the earliest example, if you go to the Nagarjuni and Barabar hills in Bihar, we see these sort of examples emerging from the 3rd century BCE context, supported by Emperor Ashoka, his son Dasharatha, and basically they were replicating the huts. If you look at the interior, the exterior is a huge granite outcrop in which they have carved an entrance. You can see the entrance is like this, and once one moves inside, there's a huge hall, rectangular hall, and at the rear end there is a complete reproduction of a hut of that particular point of time, with a sloping roof. With the sloping roof also, one can see there's a overhanging eave, and there is an entrance to this hut. So they were replicating what was available at the particular point of time in architecture, a freestanding architecture, and completely transforming it into a rock medium, because it was considered to be permanent, like we will see in the later stages how a South Indian king, he himself says that the perpetuity and the importance of the longevity of such enterprises. So we closely see that these rock cut structures, they follow the Buddhism religion, and here these two maps, it demonstrates how Ashoka, after his Kalinga war, he adopted Buddhism, and he also spread Buddhism to various parts of India, and also he sent emissaries to Sri Lanka, to Western Asia. We have evidences, and he also erected pillar edicts, minor rock edicts, and major rock edicts, clearly prescribing the monastic rules and establishments, and also appointing Dharma Mahamatras or Dharma Rakshitas for the spread of Buddhism. So we also have an important evidence like the Dharma Maharakshita. He landed at Sopara, and from that period onwards, we see the construction of a freestanding stupa here at Sopara, containing some relics also, and slowly we see spread of Buddhistic establishment in the entire part of Western Maharashtra. So this is a very crucial evidence, and these are the places where we find the rock cut structures in the Western Maharashtra, and also on certain places in Gujarat. They are slightly later, but the concentration is here. Concentration is in the Western Maharashtra, in the Pune, Ahmednagar, and also the Raigad and present-day Mumbai region, where Kanheri caves, they are such an important establishment. And slightly interior, we have a huge concentration here again near Aurangabad, Ellora, Pitalkhora, and Ajanta, combined with an ancient settlement known as Bokhardana or Bogavardhana. So, but interestingly, all these ancient rock cut structures, they are not existing in isolation. They were located very close to the ancient early historical sites. Some of the early historical sites being Pratishtana, that is the capital of the Shatavahanas, Rajatalaka or Aurangabad. Bogavardhana is another ancient settlement. Ellora itself, Ellapura itself was an ancient settlement. Nashik, Junnar or Junnagara. So there are various settlements which were actually supporting this religious edifices. They were not existing in isolation. And also all the red color arrow, it indicates the ancient trade routes. They were located on the trade routes. In particular, if you look into the Sopara and the Kanheri caves, they were on the near the ancient port cities, and they were connecting the important passes. Particularly the Naneghat Pass, it's such a crucial and important pass connecting the west and the east. The Shatavahanas, they were trying to take control of this Naneghat Pass from the Kshatrapa Pass. There was a conflict between the Kshatrapa kings, and ultimately they got control of this Naneghat Pass, and they erected the life-size portrait images of the Shatavahana kings and queens at Naneghat. So it's the ancient rulers, they were particularly considering these ancient trade routes as an important source of revenue, and they kind of try to capture them also. So all these trade routes, they were connecting these important settlements, and from these major trade routes, we also have the minor trade routes which connect some of these important settlements. So coming to the medium of various rock cut edifices or the structures, what we see is that from the earliest context, we see granite, depending upon the local rock available, they were carving the various monasteries and viharas and the religious structures here. From the earliest evidence we see in the case of Barabar and Nagarjuna hills, we have granite. Then Maharashtra, we have basalt. Basically, large number of excavations have been carried out in basalt. Then from here, from Maharashtra, it spread further south. So if we go to the Chalukyan region, we see the sandstone, red color sandstone, very typical of the Badami area. And further south, the Pallavas, they adopted from the Chalukyas, and they modified the granitic outcrops and hills located near Mahabalipuram or Mamalapuram. And before the Mahabalipuram experience, they also excavated several rocket structures at Mandagapattu and Mahendravadi and Mamandur and various places where the earliest examples of 6th century CE examples of Pallava ruin can be found. And even further south, Kalugumalai and Sittanavasal and Virinjam in Kerala, we have evidence of rocket edifices. And again, because of the local rock granite is available, they have used the rock as a medium. Looking into the donors, I mean, who are basically responsible for creating these kind of structures or establishments for the different sects? I mean, it is not only restricted to the Buddhist as it is widely known, but they were also for Ajivika sect. The earliest evidence indicates that the Ajivikas, they were initially given donations in the form of creation of such establishments, and later on Buddhism took over. Then we have evidences of Hinduism, Jainism, and other faiths which were also benefited from the royal patronage and also from the common support also. So we see various evidences, like here we see that the Sudama cave donated by Ashoka in his 12th regnal year. We don't know the donor of Lomas Rishi cave, we don't have an inscription there, but here clearly indicating the Sudama cave, it's a donation of Ashoka. Ashoka's name is there in the name of Piyadasina Lajina, Piyadasina, it's written there. Then we have a later period inscription, a Mokari period inscription in the Lomas Rishi cave, but it's a later period inscription. The carvings, they belong to the 3rd century BCE, but this inscription, it belongs to 6th century CE. In the case of Python, some of the most important donors they came from, and we see evidences in the Pitalkhora caves. These are the inscriptions from Pitalkhora, which clearly indicates the residents from Pratishtana or Python they were donating, and also the kind of occupation they are into. Like in one inscription here, Patitana Mitadevasa Gadikasa Kulasa Tabo Danam. Tabo is pillar, Danam is the donation. Gadikasa is the occupation, perfumer, from the perfumer family. The Mitra Deva or Mitadeva, he has donated. So we have very crucial evidences from various caves from the western Maharashtra in particular. Like here at Ajanta, the cave 10, we have the donation of a Katahadi, son of Vashishti, and he's donating only the facade. I mean, it's very interesting if we look into the various stages of production of a rocket edifice. In the case of Ajanta, particularly cave 10, the facade was donated by one particular individual. Pillars were donated by other individuals. Then the aisle is donated by another individual. So it's a clear-cut indication that they were attracting donations from various sections of the society, and that's how they could establish a very huge establishment. Here in the case of cave 12 at Ajanta, we have a merchant completely donating the entire monastery. This is one of the earliest monasteries here at Ajanta. Here we have the mention of the name Ganamadadasa Thanako Deya Dhammam, because they are all donating for the Dhammam. Dhammam is the Dharma. For the sake of the Buddhist establishment or the Sangha, they are donating so that they can attain benefits from that donation also. And we also have donation of pure mendicants from the other sections of the society. And how they are donating it? They are donating for the sake of their mother and father and all sentient beings. So this is the kind of message what they are sending. They are donating it for the Dharma. They are also donating for their own sake. They are donating for the sake of the well-being of the mother and the father. So we have these kind of donations, and culminating in some royal personages, like here, the cave 16 of Ajanta. It was the donation of a minister of Harishena, Varahadeva. He was donating the entire cave. It is one of the most beautifully embellished caves. Similarly, cave 17, it was the donation of the feudatory kings of Harisena, who were ruling in the region of Nashik region. So these are all some of the important evidences, and ultimately the actual royal presence here in some of the caves are seen in the case of Nashik caves. Here we have inscriptions of Gautami Balashri, the mother of Gautamiputra Shatakarni, and also another inscription by Gautamiputra Shatakarni himself. So cave 3, it's often mentioned as the royal cave, and because of the participation of the royal personals here. And we have, when we come to the southern part of India, we have a very important inscription at Mandagapattu. It was excavated by Mahendravarman, one of the earliest rulers of the Pallava dynasty. What he mentions is that this brickless, timberless, metalless, and mortarless. Yetadu anishtakam adruham aloham ashuddham. So without these things, that is brickless, without brick is constructing, without timber is constructing, without metal, and without mortar. So this is such an important inscription which clearly demonstrates that prior to this period, there were structures, or during that period also, there are structures made of brick, timber, metal, and mortar. So, but here, what he's doing a unique experiment. He is constructing a permanent structure without all these materials which were in existence or which were in use, and that's how we see a clear transformation from such sort of building materials to a rock medium. So from here onwards, we see exuberance of Pallava rock architecture at various places. He goes on to excavate different places, like I told you earlier, Mandagapattu, Mamandur, and Mahendravadi, Trichirappalli. So several places he excavated, and ultimately his son took over, and he elaborated that rocket architecture in other parts of Mahabalipuram. So, but how these rocket structures could have been excavated? We have evidences from different places, like starting from the Lomas Rishi cave and the Sudama cave. The most wonderful evidence is presented in the case of the Western Maharashtra evidences, where they selected a cliff portion of a valley, and they started to excavate from the front. They start to excavate from the front and finish from the top. So this sort of technique is known as cut-in architecture, because they are cutting it from outside and they are progressing inside the rock facade, and then they are finishing from the top to bottom. So this is the technique we see in most of the cases, even in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, also in Tamil Nadu, and even in the earliest examples. So during that process, they were selecting a suitable surface, because again, the basaltic rock formation, it consists of various lava flows. You can see the distinct lava flows here. This is one lava flow. This is the thickness varies depending upon the volume of lava that is deposited, and there are units of contacts. There are contacts in between two different lava flows. They may be 100 years separated by 100 years or 200 years. During this period, there could be different formations here, due to which we face a lot of difficulties in maintaining this case now at present. But interestingly, these people, they avoided the contacts, unit flow of contacts, and they selected such a surface so that it can be uniform, and it is suitable for carving also. Because you see, this is an indication of the unit contact of two lava flows, which is very beautifully preserved in the cave 4 of Ajanta. If you go to Ajanta caves and you look into the ceiling, you will see the negative impressions of a lava flow. When a lava flows and cools down, this sort of wavy or a ropey structure you will see on the top. Here, what has happened? There was a lava flow underneath. Then there was another wet lava flow. So they have preserved the ropey structure of the underneath lava flow. So that's why we are seeing this one, and this is very beautifully preserved in the case of cave 4 at Ajanta. So there are certain unique structural features also in the case of basaltic rock formation, which are known as lava flow channels. because lava, it was flowing in channels. Here there are 2 channels preserved near the cave 3 of Pitalkhora. This is the cave 3. Here there is the entrance. There are 2 lava flows which were abandoned at particular point of time. Otherwise, lava was flowing from these channels, and it was depositing all around. And we see excellent evidences of huge lava flows in Maharashtra near a place known as Kannad in Chalisgaon. There, at least a 100-meter wide lava flow channel is also seen. So these are other important features which we see from near the basaltic caves, and we see the basic characters of basaltic lava flow. Why they were painting the surfaces? They were painting the surfaces of Ajanta caves or Ellora caves or other important caves in the western Maharashtra, because the surface it becomes vesicular. This is vesicular because of the trapping of gases due to rapid cooling of the lava. The gases are trapped inside, and once they cut the basaltic rock, these vesicles are kind of displayed, or they exposed. So these vesicles, they are filled with different types of silicates in the past. Silicates, basically silicon dioxide, because of the cooling process, and also deposition of external mineral deposits from within the basaltic lava. So they ultimately fill the vesicles. In many places, if you see the Ajanta exposed surfaces, you will see this kind of white colored filled up quartz particles, and we also see the vesicles also. So these kind of roughened surface, they were kind of filled in by the ancients, and very beautiful paintings were created. Because it creates a very kind of odd surface like this sculpture. If you look into, it has all the kind of vesicles displayed, shown on the surface, and also there are many voids. So they have to cover them also. At many places, the vesicles they are filled with these kind of quartz particles in longer veins, but ultimately they were covering them also. In the case of South Indian examples, where they are freestanding rock cut structures, it is not cut in, but it is cut out. So they are selecting a huge rock mass, and they are starting from the top, and they are completing, and slowly at the end the bottom will be finished. Here there are 2 unfinished ones, Pidari Ratha and Valayankutai Ratha near Mahabalipuram, where up to this portion they have completed, and the lower portion they have not completed. So we have another example, very beautiful example, in front of the Mahishamardani cave at Mahabalipuram. Here they have started carving the roof here, that's a wagon vaulted roof, and they have also started carving the frontal portion, the front portion, in the form of small blocks. This is the kind of mode of excavation technique what the Pallavas they followed. They removed small blocks, then that can be easily removed, and some outline can be prepared, and then they progressed inside. So from the top also they are excavating, from the front also they are excavating. And we have another excellent example of a type of Arjuna's penance. This is the famous Arjuna's penance at Mahabalipuram. We have a miniature Arjuna's penance also, slightly away from this southwards toward this main panel, and very close to the modern day lighthouse. So you can see from this unfinished example also we can understand how they might have carved. And we have many unfinished caves from Ajanta and Ellora, from where we can understand how they're progressing from that top to bottom. They were completing the top, they were completing the roof first, then they are going behind. Then there are different levels of the floor. You can see different levels of floors. They were finished in succession. So they were finishing the top level, then they're excavating down, then they're going below, and ultimately they are finishing the front one. If you see the front one, it is completely smooth, plain here, but here it is unfinished. So this is how they progressed. We can see the different levels also, how they were excavating, because this level is required to finish the roof. They were not using any ladders. This is the kind of technique what they employed. They left many unfinished portions within the cave so that they can finish different portions of the interior of the cave. So slowly they reduce the height so that ultimately they can complete the floor level also. Here in the case of cave 30A at Ellora, we can see again the technique here. From the front, they were progressing inside. They have completed, they have finished the roof, they have completely finished the pillars here, and they have progressed inside. You can see the unfinished portion here. Here, they have already carved a Sarvato Bhadra. Sarvato Bhadra in a Jaina religion, it represents the four important jinas, that is Parshvanatha, Neminatha, Rishabhnatha, Parshvanatha, Neminatha, and Mahavira. So it is known as Sarvato Bhadra. They have already carved and finished the Sarvato Bhadra, but still this interior portion is unfinished. You can see the unfinished portion here, and they have not even carved the main shrine here. So this is the kind of technique what the rock carvers they were employing in various parts of India. So how they were developing the structural forms? I mean, I have told briefly about the kind of structural form at the Lomas Rishi and Sudama cave, how they were creating the hut here at the rear, a long rectangular hall with a wagon vaulted roof. So this sort of architecture which was available already, because we know from the Sanchi Torana reliefs, we know what kind of wooden architecture was available. So they were copying directly from the wooden architecture, already existing examples of these sort of huts, and completely transforming into the rock medium. So that's why we see complete examples of wooden elements in the rock architecture, as in the case of Karla caves here. You can see the original wooden elements, all the original wooden elements, they are still there. The wooden beams on the roof, even the chhatri over the stupa, it is also still preserved there. So it's nearly 2000 years old, and it is still preserved there completely without any damage. And the same is in the case of Bhaja. There's a nearby cave, and also there is another cave nearby Bhaja is Bedse. There also we'll see the evidence of the original wooden elements in the cave architecture. So they were completely copying, and they were reproducing whatever they were using in the wooden architecture. They were placing the stupa at the rear end of the upside-down hall, which is known as a Chaitya Griha, which is the main place of worship for the Buddhist religion, and arranging the pillars in such a manner there is a central aisle and the two naves on the other side. So there's a clear-cut architecture followed from the wooden examples, and even the pillars. If you see the earliest example, the pillars they slightly lean inside. So it is known as the angle of rake. The more the angle of rake, the more the earliest period. So the slightly around 6th, 7th century, the pillars straighten up, clearly indicating they are departing from the earliest wooden examples, but still they are following the wooden examples. And that's why we see the ribs and the pillars and the frontal elements, everything is a complete copy of the wooden architecture. So this is cave 19 from Ajanta. Here also you can see the ribs of the roof. They are clearly finished in stone, even though they don't have any functional value, but here they are still following the same practice. So we see the facade form very beautifully evolving from the earliest example of the Lomas Rishi cave, and there are slight modifications, but still they are following the horseshoe shape of the Lomas Rishi cave. In the case of Ajanta, that is the 2nd century BCE, or Bhaje, this is Bhaje, this is 2nd century BCE, or Guntapalli, it also again go to the 2nd century BCE. So we have throughout India the facade which is clearly borrowed from the Lomas Rishi and other caves from the Barabar and Nagarjuni hills, and that is completely transformed to other parts of Indian subcontinent. Even if you look at the temple architecture, we have these Chaitya Gavakshas very beautifully preserved on the temple architecture, and in the Pallava examples we have excellent examples of the employment of these kind of horseshoe arches. So they have a very long tradition, starting from the 3rd century BCE, 2nd century BCE, from the wooden architecture, and ultimately transformed into the rock medium, and then they were transformed into the structural forms also. So here we see the complete evolution of rock architecture in the case of Ajanta. We have both Hinayan or the Theravada caves that belongs to the earliest period of 2nd century BCE. It consists of a group of caves 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then there is a gap of nearly 200, 300 years, and again there is a huge royal patronage during the period of Vakataka Harishena. Then we have other monastic establishments, but clearly there are 2 or 3 distinct areas. Each area has a stupa. You can see this is one group which has a stupa, cave 19, another group having a stupa, cave 26, and monastic establishments. All these are monastic establishments. Monasteries, they are huge square or rectangular halls surrounded by cells for the monks to live. And also at a later stage, they added the shrine at the rear end. So this is the kind of development what we see from the earliest examples. We don't have this kind of arrangement. This is the earliest example of a monastery at Ajanta. It's a simple square hall with cells all around, no shrine at the rear end. But when we come to the later period, 5th century, we see the addition of a shrine at the rear end so that it can perform the function of both as a monastery as well as a place of worship. So in the case of Ajanta, we have at least 4 distinct areas of monastic establishment, and all of them, they have direct access to the river. I mean, whoever have gone to Ajanta, they have noticed the pathway starting from cave 1 and leading up to cave 26. It is not the ancient scenario. All the caves were individually they connected to the river. We have evidence of the staircases leading from the cave 16 up to the river. It is still preserved there. So this is the kind of evidence what we see at Ajanta. And monasteries, we see again a gradual evolution. As I told initially, we also have a Jaina establishment at Udaygiri and Odisha. Again, there is a square or a rectangular open space with cells all around. The earliest examples of Ajanta, it clearly indicates a similar sort of arrangement. The smaller versions also, they have a central courtyard and cells all around. But later examples, we have this set of elaborate arrangement. We have the pillars inside also, dividing them to various compartments. We have the cells for the mendicants, a shrine for the Buddha, and also elaborately painted. The wall surfaces, they are elaborately painted also. So we have examples of larger monastic complexes also. Here we see at Ellora, some of the largest monastic complexes are found in cave 12. This is the cave 12. It is also known as Teen Tal because it is in 3 different levels. It might have accommodated more than 200, 300 monks at one particular point of time. This is another example from Ellora. It's a huge rectangular hall. It is known as cave 5 at Ellora. Again, cells all around with a shrine at the rear. And this is the culmination of the Chaitya architecture. Again, we find it at Ellora, cave 10. Sutarchi Jompudi, it is known locally, or a carpenter's cave because of the excellent carvings on the facade. Here also we see there is an entrance. Again, a gateway might have been there. There's a courtyard, and it leads to the Chaitya Graha with the stupa combined with the Buddha image in Dharmachakra Paravartana Mudra in the front, and we have the nave and the aisle arrangement. And we have the cells all around also, clearly indicating it as both a small monastic as well as a Chaitya Griha. We have also variations, as in the case of freestanding structures. These are the freestanding structures from Nalanda. This complete monastery is from Nalanda. Again, it has the same plan of a central courtyard with a rear shrine and cells all around. But in the case of Nagarjuna Kunda, the evidences of 3rd century, 2nd, 3rd century CE, we have a combination of various styles. We have a combination of Chaitya. Chaitya, also 2 types of Chaitya. One has the image of Buddha. It's known as Buddha Chaitya. One has a stupa. It's known as Stupa Chaitya. So they are arranged facing each other in front of a monastery. Here, this is a monastery with a huge pillared hall, following the same kind of pattern of a Buddhist monastery. And also, in addition to that, we also have a freestanding stupa in front of such monasteries also. So there are regional variations we can see, and also elaboration starting from the earliest evidences from the sites of Bihar to Maharashtra. We have also a development. Then we come to the later period. We are seeing excellent evidences in the case of Maharashtra. Then from there, due to the context between the various dynasties, this kind of rock cut principle or technique of excavation, it extended to other regions. We find some of the earliest caves at Badami, where we see affiliation of all the three faiths, Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and Jainism. All the three faiths have been represented here. And from there, because of, again, the Pallava Chalukya context, we see the transformation of this kind of technology in a totally different medium into the Pallava territory, particularly in the northern part of Tamil Nadu, where we see evidences of this kind of rock outcrops. The granite outcrops have been used for excavating such shrines. This is the Mandagapattu, where we have seen briefly about that inscription. This is Mahendravadi, and Tiruchirappalli, where it's again attributed to the Mahendravarman's period. To gradually, you can see the developments from Mahendravadi to Mahabalipuram within a span of 30-40 years. You can see the development, the elaboration of facade pattern, facade design, how they are incorporating various aspects of the already evolving Dravidian elements of Kuta, Shala, and Panjara. This is a square shrine. It is known as Kuta. A rectangular shrine known as a Panjara or a Shala, and an upside shrine known as Panjara. So all these important components, they also denote one level of a structure. So that is already coming up in the case of Pallava structures. Even though the earliest ones, they don't have anything. I mean, it's a plain, simple pillars without any carving or decoration, but ultimately they are incorporating various sculptural motifs and also decorative patterns. And from then they transform into the freestanding rock outcrops, which were completely carved from the top to bottom. And the most famous example is these 5 shrines or the Panchapandava caves, where we have excellent examples of different types of temples. I mean, had it been freestanding temples, you would find this kind of a temple with a sloping roof resembling a hut. Then a typical Dravida Shikara. Here you can see the Dravida Shikara, pyramidal square shape with a pyramidal roof, and here again a Dravida Shikara with a wagon vaulted roof. So we find all kind of evidences completely evolved within a span of 50-40 years, starting from the period of Mahendravarman to Narasimhavarman's time. So the Pallavas, they kind of the forerunners in constructing structural temples, totally departing from the rock cut medium, and they started to construct freestanding structural temples. And some of the earliest examples being the Shore temple at Mahabalipuram and the Kanchipuram Kailashanatha temple. And they were freestanding temples. They again employed different mediums. Here in the case of Shore temple, they have completely employed a granite. Here a combination of granite as well as the lime stucco they have used. And because of the conflicts between the Pallavas, Chalukyas, and Rashtrakutas being the feudatories of Chalukyas, there were constant exchange of techniques and craftsmen between the two territories. And one particular point of time when the Chalukya Vikramaditya, he invaded the Kanchipuram for 3 times. He took away the artisans from Kanchipuram, and ultimately this sort of Dravida Shikara, it was transferred into the Chalukyan territory, and ultimately the Rashtrakutas, they borrowed that, and that saw the culmination of the Kailasha. The Cave 16 at Kailasha, it is the magnum opus. It is the culmination of rock cut architecture in India. It's a huge mass of rock was freed from the surrounding hillock area. You can see that this is the hillock area. They removed a huge block of stone, nearly 100 feet by 100 feet, and then starting from the top to bottom, they carved various different layers and isolating different features like these elephant statues and the Dvajastamba, and also carving various different features. And it went on expansion also. I mean, if we go to the Kailasha cave, even though the main temple complex, it is completed with the main Vimana surrounded by 6 more smaller shrines, we have all around, there are vast spaces available for them, which were excavated during various points of time, even after the Rashtrakutas completed the Kailasha cave. So this is the culmination of rocket architecture in India, drawing parallels from the Kailasanatha temple at Kanchipuram, exactly transferring the Dravidian Vimana architecture here. So after that period, we see a slight decline. We don't see huge edifices such as those created by the Rashtrakutas. But here at Ellora itself, we see in another corner, and the northern end of the Ellora caves, we have a group of Jaina caves, 5 to 6 Jaina caves, where they slowly followed the same pattern of the Rashtrakuta style of architecture also. And we can see this is again a Sarvatobhadra shrine of the Jaina faith. We have 4 Jaina images here: Adinatha, Neminatha, Parshvanatha, and Mahavira. And the Shikara is very closely resembles the Dravidian Shikara, and also a miniature of the Kailasha cave of cave 16. But if you look at the interior is highly decorated. It is profusely carved. Each and every space is carved profusely with minute ornaments, and also painted at particular point of time. The ceilings were painted, the walls were painted, even the sculptures were painted. And there are excellent examples of the Jaina Tirthankara images from the cave 32 and 34 of Ellora also. And we have various subsidiary deities of the Jaina Tirthankaras also, like this Ambika. It is the she is the deity associated with Neminatha. So we have various deities associated with different Tirthankaras, and they were also given prominent space here. Finally, these rock surfaces, they were excellent mediums for carvings, rock carvings. We see from the earliest period onwards. This is the excellent example of Shatavahana period sculptures from Karle. You can see the robustness, you can see the bulky nature of the carvings in the earlier period. It slightly becomes more realistic if you come to the Ellora. This is the famous Ravana shaking Kailasa episode from Ellora in cave 29. And the Buddha Mahaparinirvana in cave 26 in Ajanta. So we have a great evolution of rock carvings. The sculptures were carved on various surfaces depending upon the theme, depending upon the philosophy, depending upon the religious affiliation. And at many places we see minute carvings, like in the case of cave 19 at Ajanta. It is minutely carved. Every surface, every point available there, they were carved with beautiful carvings. And in the case of South Indian temples, rock-cut temples, you can see the excellent manifestation of sculptural forms, and also miniature shrines on the rock surfaces. And finally, they were providing excellent surfaces for creating some of the most important paintings and very beautiful paintings of the Indian subcontinent. You can see this is from cave 1 at Ajanta, the beautiful depiction of Bodhisattva Padmapani. And here, this is cave 2 at Ajanta. You can see Buddha in the Dharmachakra Parvatana Mudra here. But you can see the kind of decorations on the ceilings. Even the ceilings, they were completely decorated with various motifs. And we also have the 2nd century BCE paintings from Ajanta cave 10. These 2 paintings, they are from cave 10 of the Sibi Jataka on the right left wall of cave 10. And many places they have prepared the surface. They have applied at least 2 to 3 layers of mud plasters, then a lime plaster, then they executed the paintings. But there are instances where they executed paintings directly on the wall surface. Like here, you can see a very beautiful Bodhisattva on a wall surface, directly on a wall surface in cave 3 at Pitalkhora. So the rocket architecture, which started somewhere around 3rd century BCE in a remote corner of Bihar, it slowly spread mainly through Buddhism, and later on many different religious affiliations also followed through, and experimentations went on in different parts of the country, and ultimately we see the culmination of the rocket architecture in Ellora. I think this is the end, and thank you so much for listening.
We thank you very warmly. It was a wonderful journey, and we look forward to continuing it tomorrow with constructed temples in particular. Thank you very much, Dr. Prabhakar.